it nails every single aspect of the character correctly. What do I mean by that? You can hear the truth, justice, and the goddamn American way at full display. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be analyzing and taking a look to one of the most important and actually influential soundtracks ever in movie history. We're talking about, of course, the soundtrack for the Superman movie, the one and only made by and written by, composed by, and allegedly, according to the cover for the album, conducted by John Williams, the man, the myth, the legend, who has written several amazing and important soundtracks across his career, such as Indiana Jones, Star Wars, just among many others. So we are going to be tackling this particular review from the perspective of trying to understand the role of the soundtrack when it comes to the portrayal of the characters and the action taking place in the movie. So if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. But before we go, if this is the first time in the channel, I welcome you because here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, but using language that everybody can understand, in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production, songwriting, and of course music appreciation. So if this is your jam, it's time to rock and roll. Let's go. So here we go, the Superman theme by John Williams. Very Star Wars. Sorry for interrupting, but you know the drill. First and foremost, what an iconic, and I would dare to use that particular word that I have many problems with, but this soundtrack is actually iconic. It's a track, it's a song that actually makes you think of actual Superman. I can even see the Superman logo getting closer to the screen, right? It's so Superman-y because it nails every single aspect of the character correctly. What do I mean by that? You can hear the truth, justice, and the goddamn American way at full display at the beginning of the musical theme, right? Because you can see the use of the orchestra and how the different elements of the orchestra are used to produce this emotion on you. Because at the beginning you heard the strings, not necessarily during the prelude. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper on that one a little bit later. But you'll see that the march itself, as soon as the track it begins playing the actual song, the theme, you get the string section playing the already adding tension. And I love the use of the dynamic range, which is the loudness between sections. I'm gonna explain that a little bit more later. But you can hear that the track begins super quietly. It's not necessarily loud in your face, but little by little, it builds up. It creates this emotion and this intrigue, but also excitement, because the sound of the music itself, it's already giving you the impression that this is gonna be heroic. And once the main theme hits you with the horns and the rest of the orchestra kicking in, the tan, it truly embodies the sentiment of this being Superman, because it sounds, as I said before, positive, and like a role figure, if that makes sense to you. This is somebody who would inspire you to be better and to see how far you can go as a human being. Because even though this is Superman, one of the ethos of the whole concept of Superman is that even though he might be almost like a godlike figure, he still understands what makes a human being beautiful and a human being as a whole, right? That's why he's heroic. And also, he shows restraint in the use of his powers, because he could easily be, he turn himself into a villain and take over the world, but he never does. Why? Because one of the virtues of what makes a hero is having control over yourself, is not letting your emotions take over you. And that's important. But once again, coming back to the sound of the music, you'll see that the track at the beginning, now taking us already at the very, very starting point of the track, the prelude of the song, we got this kind of dark sounding, kind of eerie, kind of Star Warsy, because it reminds me quite a lot to the sound of Tatooine. That's the name of the first planet, right? Yes. It sounds like that area of the, or that particular portion of the Star Wars saga. And obviously, because John Williams also did the soundtrack for those movies. I don't know exactly where does the Superman soundtrack fits within the timeline of the releases for the original Star Wars trilogy, but it's, I think, in between the second one. What's the name of the second one? Revenge of, no, it's the Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi. I think it's between the release of those two, but I might be wrong. Please correct me on that one. Now, the soundtrack at that point feels very Star Warsy, but it makes sense because if you think about it, Superman is an alien. It's not a human being, and he came from outer space. So adding those elements that are kind of similar to the soundtrack for Star Wars makes total sense. But also, it gives you this sense of adventure, or not adventure, I would say a little bit scary elements to the soundtrack, because it gives you the danger. It presents the danger to you, because even though we're dealing with Superman, there has to be some sort of danger lurking in the shadows, right? And the prelude actually embodies that beautifully. Now, another thing, it also reminds me quite a lot of Tchaikovsky's The Swan Lake. There are certain tracks of that particular beautiful ballet I recommend it to you to listen to, and also see the whole performance as it is intended to be seen, and enjoy it. And certain sections of the prelude made me think of several tracks of the Swan Lake. Beautiful, but now I'm derailing. Now, let's go back to the music, and once I talk to you again, we're gonna be discussing the mix because it's so unique. You'll see. Let's keep going. Here we go. Once again, sorry for interrupting, but I wanted to point out that how beautiful the use of the orchestra is, particularly in that particular point. I was trying to point out while the track was playing, but it gives you this childlike sense of wonder, don't you think? Encapsulating beautifully the whole concept of the superhero. Because let's face it, man, comic books are originally meant to be read by kids and children. And of course, they can be enjoyed by anybody, right? Because in the end, a proper superhero comic book should be a source of inspiration for whoever is reading it to become better. That's why they are called heroes. Heroes. And the thing is that you can hear the actual sense of innocence in that part, across the whole soundtrack, in a very beautiful way. And it's amazing that he managed, John Williams, to kind of nail the balance between this being a properly highly polished Hollywood movie that still appeals to adults while retaining the childlike innocence that makes Superman and comic books in general be cherished by many people around the world. Excellently done. Also, you see that the song itself is presenting several of the musical themes that are part of the movie. Of course, if I recall correctly, because it's been a while since I watched this movie, this is the opening track for the entirety of the movie. I think this is this is during the title screen, right? The title screen, the credits. While the credits are rolling at the beginning of the movie, and it's already showing you the entirety of the musical phrases that will be used across the movie to express the different emotions and the different personality traits of the main character, in this case, Superman. You heard at least 3 to 4 different musical themes that goes from heroic to gentle to quirky to kind of menacing, but in the proper way, not in a good way, if that makes sense to you. Why is that? Superman is not just Superman; it's also Clark Kent, and Clark Kent is meant to be kind of dorky, because that's how he hides his Superman persona from the public, and allowing him to actually live among mortals, if you wish to use that terminology. And it's very interesting how John Williams managed to express that duality through the use of music. That's a good soundtrack. Well done. Now, let's take a look at the screen, because I want to talk about a little bit regarding the mix. You'll see that we got in front of us Decibel, which is the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium. And in here we got the frequency range analyzer. In here, if you know, you know, but if you don't know, not a problem, let me explain. Here we got the loudness of each of the different frequencies that comprises the human hearing range, which stands for 20 hertz all the way down to 20,000 hertz. Sorry. And this white line represents how loud each of those frequencies were at the highest point during the playback of the track. And you can see here that we got not that much low end. Interesting, not necessarily, but it's also important to be mentioned. Because you'll see classical music, well, this is not classical music, this is a soundtrack that is performed by an orchestra. This kind of music is not recorded in a studio. It's usually recorded inside of a beautifully sounding and beautifully tailored concert hall. Why? A good chunk of what makes the sound of the orchestra sound the way it does is the acoustics of the environment in which it's being recorded or in which the orchestra is performing. And in this case, I don't know exactly where they actually recorded this soundtrack. It could have been a concert hall or one of those gigantic, fantastic, almost dreamlike studios that they use for this kind of soundtracking sessions. But regardless of where it was done, I can tell just by listening to it that the space was huge, because it feels gigantic. Why? Think of yourself going into an empty room in an apartment building, right? You might be looking for a place, and whenever you get into that room, how does it sound like? Sounds kind of like this, right? When you speak, there is something going on, and you can hear it right now because I'm applying that effect to my voice. That's known as reverb. But in this case, reverb is basically speaking the reflections of any sound being produced inside of a room, and the sound waves themselves are bouncing back from the walls and coming back to the point of origin. That creates all sorts of problems and all sorts of effects. Some of them are beneficial, some of them are terrible, but That's the whole point of acoustics and acoustic treatment for that matter. In this case, you can hear that the space is big because of how the reflections of the instrumentation are captured, and they you can hear them, giving the sense of space. Very important. And in music, it gives you the sense of space, obviously, but also it gives you emotion. There is an emotional reaction we got to that effect, that particular sound, because it could either make things feel farther away or feel bigger, among many other things. And in this case, it's used to the benefit of the soundtrack for it to feel bigger and more exciting. But now, coming back to the screen, you can see that we got not that much low end, and I am putting that much emphasis on this particular portion of the analysis because modern sound tracking tends to be higher in low end. Why is that? The instrumentation comes first. For example, compare if you think of the soundtrack for the first Snyder movie. I think it was Man of Steel. That's the name, if I recall correctly. It sounds a little bit like this. You can hear the difference already, right? And the difference lies on the fact that the instrumentation is different. You got synthesizers, and also you got more percussions, and they are recorded in a different fashion. That low end, it's kind of a trademarked sound of a modern music production. Back in the day, when this movie got released, most recordings sounded similar to this one when it comes to the frequency display. And if we look at this again, you'll see that the rest is very well represented. It's not loud, but it's not overly intense. Here's where you got some of the percussions, the big drums, and also some of the low end instruments such as the violas. Not violas, more of a low mid range, but you got cellos and of course basses and some of the horns that are being used to create this powerful sounding take. But also, again, the way that classical music is recorded is done by recording everything at the same time, and that can create many artifacts. But I'm derailing. Now let's take a look at the second section of the analyzer. This is the dynamic range, and this is the most important part of this, particularly this track, right? Why? You can see here that we got this blue blob. This blue blob represents the points in volume throughout the performance of the track, or the playback rather. And the higher it goes, the louder the section was. This is the prelude. This is the introduction to the track. See how low in volume it was. Once again, the use of volume is to develop the sense of, well, you can actually create different emotional reactions by playing with the different points of intensity in music. The lower it goes, the quieter the song becomes. The music itself is gonna give the impression of it being more mysterious, darker sounding, kind of dangerous to a certain degree, dready, or sexy if you want to look at it from that perspective as well. More intimate. And when something's louder, of course, it becomes exciting, heroic, and blah, blah, blah. You can see where I'm taking you to. And clearly, the prelude is just there to draw your attention in and give you this kind of mysterious vibe. That's why I was making emphasis or putting so much emphasis on the idea of it being reminding me a little bit of the Star Wars soundtrack. And here's where the heroism kicks in. Loud as all balls, super powerful, punching, exciting. And see how it behaves later. Once again, we got the drop here, but it's just to catch up in volume and intensity. And this is very important because that's what keeps a song from becoming boring. In classical music, or rather, or if I put it in different terms, orchestral music, dynamic range is one of the most important elements. Because I can assure you that whenever you try to listen to classical music, for those of you who are not that into but have given yourself the chance, one of the reasons why not that many people stick to the whole thing with classical music or orchestral music is how quiet it is at certain points, and then how loud it becomes at certain points. That's dynamic range, and it's meant for you to enjoy it. If you go there and crank up the volume, you're just simply removing that level of expressivity. And this applies to every music genre. It's not exclusive to orchestral music. The problem is that we, as a society, have developed this this tendency of just enjoying music that it's always flat in dynamism, that's incorrect. We're missing out on so many levels because by doing that, it's like making everything feel flat and equal. That's not what makes the world roll. Everything's different, and that diversity is what allows the world to be enjoyable or at least interesting. And in music, in mind what happens when everything is if a dynamic range affects the emotional impact of a track. What will happen to a song if every single section of the song sounds the same way? No emotion at all, right? That's why it's important. Okay, let's finish this bad boy off. Here we go. What an ending, man. I love it. I didn't remember this song finishing in this way. Again, what a beautiful way to introduce Superman to the masses. I can't imagine how it was going to the cinema with your dad to watch the Superman movie back when it got released and being blasted by this amazing piece of music while you see the gigantic Superman logo in front of you in all of the glory that the silver screen has to offer. I'm getting goosebumps, by the way. One thing, I'm not necessarily a Superman fan. I'm not even that big of a DC fanboy. I like quite a lot. Some of their characters are fantastic. And believe it or not, I'm kind of a comic book nerd to a certain degree. I have to be more of on the Marvel side of things, but not due to the movies. I hate modern Marvel with all of my guts. You can see. But once again, coming back to Superman and the soundtrack, fantastic, beautiful. John Williams, he is always doing the same, which is loud and louder and emotional and impactful and super Hollywoody, if that makes sense. But we love him for that very reason. His soundtracks are always fantastic, memorable, and he's one of the very last composers, I would dare to say, in modern movie making that still writes musical pieces that are remembered by the masses. Because we were having this experiment here at the studio a few days ago, and we are trying to remember any of the soundtrack for any modern movie. And being very frank, it was a very tough thing to do because I couldn't. Modern cinema is missing out on this. We need to bring this back. We need to make movies great again, being very honest. And if we analyze these soundtracks and we start to understand what makes them unique and awesome, we will eventually be able to come back to this. Because you see, this is sincere. It's going straight to the point. It's understanding what the movie is about, who the target audience is, but still respecting the intelligence of everybody by not going straight to the fun, stupid, and campy version of Superman that the movies actually portray. These movies are kind of silly to a certain degree, but that's why we love them so much. I haven't seen any Superman or any modern take on Superman that was as good as this one, being very honest. Please tell me what you think about it. And if you want me to give my takes regarding the other Superman soundtracks for more modern movies, let me know, because I will gladly do. I picked this one because this is the only Superman movie that I actually have watched through and through and truly liked, being very honest. The rest, I couldn't care less, being very frank. But some of them have very beautiful soundtracks, for example, Man of Steel. But once again, If you want to know more about this, or if you want to have this conversation later on, please do. And if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by listening to music on Apple Music and Spotify, which has nothing to do with soundtracks, but whatever. I happen to be a huge fan of these composers, so there is a little bit of it in the way that I write music. And also, you can join and keep the conversation going by joining our Discord, link in the description down below. And the only thing left to remind it, of course, is that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember, they will see you when we see you.